So let's talk about Bo a little bit, Ben, because obviously he's had his struggles. He's been bumped down the order, had a conversation with the manager that the manager suggested didn't go exactly swimmingly, but he had himself a game today.
He really did. I think offensively and defensively. And I think what we're seeing in the last little while around Bo Bichette is just these reminders of how good he can be. We saw last week in Baltimore when he hit those two opposite field home runs, one off 99 miles an hour. The upside there and the defensive play, as you see with that aggressive charge to turn a very difficult defensive play. Defensively, offensively, you're looking at a player who can still do special things, even if this year it hasn't necessarily gone that way more often than not. I still think the next 45 games or so, he's someone who has that gear.
I don't know if there's an answer to this one, guys, but putting it together seems to be a problem for this team. They just can't seem to put it together at the right time. When Bo has a game or when Santiago Espin, I mean, for all the talk of the bullpen at the deadline, going into this game, the Jays had the lowest bullpen ERA since July 8th. However, the starters had gone off the rails. They were 0-6 with an MLB worst 7.14 ERA in the last 10 starts. The offense averaging over 6 runs a game in June. We're averaging just 3.31 in August through 13 games heading in. Jamie, Joe, help me out with this one. How does this happen when a team is that good that you see all these flashes of brilliance, yet it never comes together?
Because 162 games does not permit that to happen on a consistent basis. I think anybody who watches with regularity understands that sometimes everything clicks and sometimes nothing seems to click. I mean, you mentioned the bullpen. Their strikeout rates have plummeted in the month of August, and perhaps it's due to wear and tear. Who knows? I mean, we've seen enough of these situations where a starter's gone 3 or 4 and change, and 4, 5, and sometimes 6 arms have come out of said bullpen. So there are a number of reasons why there's an ebb and flow to every season, and I think you're seeing parts of that now, Joe.
Yeah, and I think after 162, this team will be who they are, whatever the record says they are. I think, Tim, too, while there are some veteran players on this team, there are a lot of young players. Yeah. We said this last year. They're going through these pressures of a pennant race for the first time. Well, hopefully now it's the second time, and hopefully those experiences last year will help them. But this reminds you of how difficult this game is, and I don't care if your name is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or Alejandro Kirk. It doesn't matter. It's a very difficult game, especially this time of year when these guys are deep into it. And you can just look at the offensive numbers of these Blue Jays hitters, and I keep referring to them as the big boys, the guys that you're relying on. All of them have kind of taken a little bit of a step back, and that just reminds you that the league continues to adjust. They continue to challenge Bo different ways. He has to adapt. They continue to do the same to Vladdy, to Teoscar. The list goes on and on. George has been around a long time. I think we know what he knows what pitchers are going to do and what he's going to do in response. Hasn't been the same result necessarily, but he's still an awfully good player. But for these other guys, this chess match continues, and I don't know that necessarily we're going to know maybe for another year or so what Bo Bichette is, for example, as a major league hitter, but he just does so many things so well that you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for him to continue to break out. But it just reminds us, too, that not every year is improvement. You expected everybody to take a step forward this year. It doesn't happen that way in this game, and we're seeing it.
Amazingly, they have the exact same record that they did last year through 116 games. All right, last one, and it's kind of a follow-up here, Joe, and that is, I know the old saying, momentum is your next day's starter, but can that 7th inning lead to a little momentum going into Yankee Stadium in this very important 4-game series?
Yeah, I don't know if it can contribute to a win tomorrow, but I know for sure it helps, because when you start playing, or they've been playing this way so long here, is you really start doubting yourself, and it's a terrible feeling, because you feel like, okay, wait a minute, we were cruising along here pretty good. We had the first wild card. I thought things were going to be okay, but maybe we aren't as good as we thought. Now, I'm not saying that's the feeling in the clubhouse, because nobody would ever admit to that. But you're human beings, too, and when you see that wild card just continue to slip away and you're slipping lower and lower in the standings, I got to believe there's a lot of people doubting themselves in there. That's just the nature of us as human beings. So, yes, this can help a lot, and I think it's also very important that guy right there is the one that ignited it. You've got your best player for a reason. He was off today, but he is integral in that comeback today. So I think all of it together can certainly help. It makes for a better plane ride, it makes for a better arrival in New York, and it makes a better trip to the ballpark.
And the meal tastes better tonight, too.
The meal tastes so much better.
Wouldn't be a post game without both of you. Jamie, Joe, thank you. I'm not Jewish. You two are Mensches. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim.
There is Jamie and Joe down at the ballpark. I love the word mensch. I think it applies to both those guys and to you as well, Ben Nicholson-Smith. So listen, I talk about the batters because obviously we expected a lot from this offense. And this isn't exactly the Braves of the 90s. Kyle Bradish, Dean Kramer, and Austin Voth aren't supposed to do what they did to the Jays. And we forget that Voth just had 6 innings of shutout ball against this team. What is it that you're seeing from this offense, and do you think that 7th inning can do something?
I think it can help for sure. It's a great sign after a homestand where going into the game they had scored 9 runs. I mean, just not enough offensively. You know, to explain it is extremely tough, and I think, you know, Jamie and Joe just offered some great insights there. I like just looking at the 162, and I think when you zoom out, then you kind of realize that these ebbs and flows are inevitable. It's just going to happen in the course of a season. In the moment, of course, it's upsetting. You're trying to search for answers, and it's not to say the slump isn't real. It's not random. They're actually slumping, but these hitters are really talented. And even if you look at the results for the season, only 3 teams have scored more runs than the Jays. Yankees, Astros, and Dodgers. So it's not like it's a bad offense.
I mean, I did the numbers coming in. They also were tied for the league lead in batting average.
Yeah.
With Colorado coming into this game tonight. So it's not as if I was trying to find these numbers, but it just feels like that. And I know Jamie said ebbs and flows, and I think Jesse, I may be the kings of the ebbs and flows, but maybe it's more peaks, and it feels like feast and famine when it comes to the Jays.
It does. It really does. And I think there's never been a feeling of safety with this team all year.
Not at all.
You know, like just when it feels like they should have that, and they should be pushing for it, it disappears, and they're fighting with the Orioles for a playoff spot.
All right, on a Tim and Friends post-game show, we always say that you have a say in what we do. And Jesse Rubinoff has the 1s and 2s of Twitter and Instagram. Jesse, what is going on the social medias as we speak?
Well, it appears we do have some news. John Schneider just met with the media and has confirmed that Mitch White will start on Saturday, and Yusei Kikuchi has been moved to the bullpen.
Well, I think we knew that, though, and I know we haven't talked about it yet.
Official, yeah.
It is now official, but Yusei Kikuchi sitting in the bullpen today, probably a good idea.
It's a strong hint. A little bit tip
Probably a good idea.
They can use a lefty there for sure. I know
but officially, I get what you're saying. Mitch White goes in, and lo and behold, guess who it is on Saturday? Garrett Cole for the New York Yankees, who are struggling and will immediately follow Tim and Friends tonight as they take on the Rays. So just lay down the remote. We got you covered.
Nice plug.
What are they saying on socials today?
Am I not a mensch? Am I not? You said Ben's a mensch. Am I not a mensch?
You've been a mensch for about 2 years on this show.
Bubby was going to be big mad at you. I'm just saying.
Right.
David writes into the show and says, hats off to our Blue Jays. It's not rocket science, but hitting with men on base to right center field scores more runs than long balls to the warning track. Well done, Jays.
Yeah, the approach conversation is an interesting one.
Fozzie says there's been a few of those turning point wins this season, and they've all resulted in nothing, which I think is maybe a bit of a stretch when you consider where they are still currently in a playoff spot.
It's a tough one for me. Because listen, I have a saying that's written at the front hall of the McAuliffe household that says, our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And earlier this week was basically the 3rd time where people are saying, hit the panic button, boys. And they've responded in each of those 2 previous times. I'm not saying one game is a response. Do not get me wrong. But they needed this one. They got this one. Now they go to New York. And, man, is that interesting.
Yeah, another big test. And I just think the way this season is going, like, there are going to be so many more stressful games and so many more stressful series and big series and season-defining series because they're running out of time to build the kind of security that they would need to really establish a safety net for themselves. So the way things are going, late September, early October, it's every one of these games is going to be incredibly stressful.
Buckle in, kids. 6 teams, basically 3 spots, 46 games now remaining for the Toronto Blue Jays.
It still appears not everybody is satisfied. Alan writes in and says, one player on the team is batting .300. Our best player is going to struggle to make 100 RBIs and 30 homers for a team that is supposedly stacked with offensive talent. They sure aren't showing it, and I don't see how they go deep into the season with everyone taking the year off.
Oof.
That's just insight into where some Jays fans are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
A couple more here. G says it's only one win, as you just alluded to, Timmy. If they win the next 3 series, then things can calm down. I don't know if you don't want to get a little greedy, but that's all right. Wins have been hard to come by. Francis says they showed some true emotion and fought hard for that win, promising. Brandon says, the team that slumps together gets hot together. And that's something we were talking about a little bit while we were watching the game.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes.
Like
definitely.
you would rather listen, you'd rather everyone going at the same time. But for me, I would rather, guy picks up the slack here, guy picks up the slack there, you get a little pull. And it feels like, listen, the bullpen's been doing a real good job over the last basically month. So you could say they've been picking up the slack. But I think they need just a few more pieces going at a time would be helpful.
We got a lot coming in, and we had a match game sent out a little bit earlier that we'll get to a little later in the show as well. So we're busy over here.
All right, so we will introduce a match game. Ben Nicholson-Smith is sticking around. We'll take the break, but we'll keep the Jays post-game talk going. We'll hear from the aforementioned John Schneider, and we'll hear more from you, the fans, as we introduce a match game and take you to 7 p.m. Eastern when the Rays and Yankees come your way. Tampa looking for a sweep in the Bronx. Lay down the remote, please. It's our livelihood.